Welcome to another episode of Love Selling, Hate Sales. Oftentimes in B2B SaaS, there is this concept of partnerships, and the software companies work with consulting partners and services partners to do everything from implementation, strategy, staff augmentation, and all these sorts of things. And it becomes an interesting dynamic between sellers because both organizations have these software people, but they also have these partner folks. And these partner folks are essentially responsible for bringing software salespeople together to do all sorts of different types of activities, things like co-selling, deal referrals, and everything in between. It's an interesting dynamic in the B2B SaaS world that often doesn't get a lot of publicity when you see things like these huge billion-dollar valuations and things like that, but it's absolutely happening behind the scene, and it's absolutely driving a lot of business and value for both the software organization and obviously the services organizations that are building themselves into that ecosystem. Companies like Microsoft, Adobe, Salesforce have hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars of money flowing through their ecosystem through partners, and they're not all technology partners. A lot of them are big consulting and professional services. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today with two guests. I know it's a new format for the show. We've never had two guests at one time, so it might be a little bit of an interesting dance that we all work with as we figure out who's talking and who's taking what. But I'm joined by Clarke and Paul Chadwick, both enterprise account executives with Shift Paradigm, a professional services and consulting firm out of Austin, Texas, who do a lot of work in the software ecosystem. Companies like Adobe, Telium, Sixth Sense, Drift, all in their partner ecosystem. Paul Reed, thanks for joining the show.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, so this is a world that I think the three of us have all lived in for the better part of a decade now, selling to and through software partners. If you could talk about the one thing that maybe drives you the craziest about working with software partners, what would it be?
I mean, for me, it's that the large companies, they change so often. The regions change, the clients and the accounts change, the reps change. They move in and out, either within their organization or two or other organizations, like we talked about with Adobe and Salesforce and some of the big ones. It's an open door. They spend 18 months, they move to the next one. So, when you're working in enterprise sales, sometimes you're account planning, you're working an account for 1-2+ years to try to get a deal in. And your partner might change multiple times throughout that as far as who your day-to-day is, and now you're dealing with his boss or whoever that is. So there's really not a lot of consistency.
Well, oftentimes in that ecosystem, you're working with partner people, right? They're kind of playing this liaison role, and then you're working with account executives at the software partner, or maybe customer success managers, whatever it may be. Where do you see the most turnover? Are you seeing it in the partner organization or directly at the seller level?
There's movement throughout all those. And you just mentioned all those different roles. That's all the roles we have to deal with constantly. And so a sale you used to do by yourself, you're now doing it 3 or 4 or 5 other people. And at any one point, somebody can get promoted or moved within an organization. They can go to another organization. It's barely controlled chaos as far as that movement goes.
Well, then tie in think about all the large organizations that reorg geographies or different accounts that you go after, right? So you may be working with and start developing a relationship with a rep who gets moved into a different vertical or a different industry, maybe a different revenue band. And so now this new person gets inserted. And so it's a balance of your time as much as continue to establish a relationship with the final person or the client in that regard. And so having to, share information or, my thing to answer your original question is like the list sharing, right? Going back and forth of here's who we're talking to, here's who we know, and then you're having to have potentially that same conversation numerous times based on Reed's comment around, potential shifts, people leaving, turnover, reorg, restructuring of the sales organization. So it starts to become pretty convoluted as you work together for the end goal, which is always trying to make the client happy or provide the right service and or technology to that client. So
sometimes I feel like the AEs get thrown into the partnership from both sides, right? Whether it's the software team or the services team, the account execs just get thrown at it by the partner folks. And there's really been no expectations set for what the partnership is. What are the boundaries? How is the trust established between those things? Where have you seen that go well, and maybe where have you seen it gone sideways?
Well, I mean, the key is with any salesperson, it's what's in it for them. When you add a second salesperson to that mix, now you've got a comp partner manager to the mix. Everybody's trying to get a piece of that pie, and you're definitely right. The partner people drive it. Lots of times with the product people or the marketing group at the consulting firm, and then the AEs get thrown in last and say, okay, all of you guys need to be best friends and work together because two is better than one, and maybe that. What you do is working, what they're doing is working, and maybe together we can do that together with one client, and that will work. And let's create some plan, and then, as Paul mentioned, then let's throw some lists at it and see what happens.
Well, I think it's an interesting dynamic. The other variable you bring up, Josh, around is there an established partner program in place, right? So I think some of the newer versions of partner programs that are either getting reignited or newer, at least in my experience, last call it 3 months to however many years, you start having conversations with sales reps that aren't enabled, that don't know how service partners work, that are selling potential their own pro serve and don't know where the boundary line is between, more of a holistic value sell where a group like us may know multiple technologies and they're just selling into their one technology in terms of the support. So a client may be wanting more of that invisible thread across the different technologies. So I think enablement's a big one. Like, is there a partner program set up? And as partner folks, begin to start newer roles in those partner, situations, how do we quickly enable the sales folks to understand where we play in the market? How do we not take revenue share from them? How are we being incentivized? I think that's always a big one. How reps are incentivized in the partner and tech world, because that certainly drives drives behavior in how our relationships work and coexist.
How often are you working with sellers at your partners who even know how to work with a partner?
Coin flip. I mean, I'll get on a call. Someone has more of a seasoned enterprise rep who's worked with services organizations in the past, and they get where we get plugged in and where we don't, and know what to look for. And then we'll talk. I've had a conversation the other day where you're meeting a salesperson for the first time who's new to us, who's new to a partner, and you can see a little bit of tension as we have conversations around, are you taking over what I want to sell? And if that's not always the case, right? So I think that part of the enablement, does that come from the partner? Does that come from the AE on the services side? There's a lot of different entry points. I think collectively the answer is most likely everyone, but where do we spend all that time to truly enable to hit that peak efficiency?
It's interesting you talk about enablement, because for services organizations like the one that we all used to work for before acquisition was called LeadMD, we were a professional services company that focused on a marketing automation platform called Marketo. And really, our prospecting was Marketo's account executives, right? Looking to help them, educate them on why they should leverage us as a part of their deal cycle. So our prospecting was through partners. All that education and enablement is geared toward teaching them why partnership matters, what's in it for them. So where have you seen that work really well in terms of educating someone on the other side who, again, is looking out for themselves, looking out for their commission, hopefully they're looking out for their client? What's working?
Yeah, you really get two clients. You've got your true prospect, and now you've also got the partner rep that you're working with as your second prospect. So you really have to run both those cycles at once, because the trust is key in both those situations. And if the person you're selling to doesn't believe that the partnership between the two of you is solid, then you're probably not going to get that sale. So getting that upfront trust, making sure you've got a cohesive plan helps a lot with that. But also just making sure that the goal is set and that everybody knows what they're going to get. Everyone's worried in a software to services relationship of who's going to pay what, who's going to get what money, where's the budget going to go, and you really just have to be clear about that, because we're really selling two very, very different things. A software, some sort of widget that they're turning on and putting an instance out of, versus people's time and what could be a longer term project. There's threats both directions with that. So having a good cohesive plan, having a really good understanding of what we're going to do together to try to solve the problem and really have a service attitude towards that, even for the software rep, is going to be key.
So it sounds like trust with the partner first, right? how do you go about building that trust? Because I've seen a lot of times that these partner programs are thinly veiled referral programs, right? Are they being honest with themselves? Are they just looking for referrals, or is it actually a partner program? How can you sniff that out on your side? And then if it does feel like a legit partner program, how do you start engaging and building trust?
Yeah, I love this question. So when I think of trust, I think of, establishing credibility with a partner. I think also developing a relationship, because that, in my opinion, over time equals trust. And so to Reed's point, if you don't have trust from the partner angle, it's tough to sell that to the client or have that conversation with the client, because it becomes disjointed, right? Separate calls, different interests, different incentives on what the software does, where it starts and stops, where do the service organizations come in. So, I think about solutioning for that, in my experience, at least recently, especially post-COVID, is getting in front of people and being face-to-face again, and not just sending lists over or sending an email saying, here's a referral, let's figure it out. Like, let's have a conversation. I think the second part of that, once you start developing that trust, is having some use cases or some stories around, here's where, I may have leveraged your technology to support an existing client of mine, and here's what happened, right? I think there's some use cases always help, but the relationship is key. I've verbatim, I heard from 2 sales leaders that we wouldn't even intro you to not only our sales reps or our clients if we had not met you face to face. Like, we certainly appreciate the willingness to have an event, whether it's a dinner, a game, or whatever we may call it. But there is an element of breaking bread with somebody and having that conversation and telling some stories and developing that trust and relationship, because it starts to open those doors. And I didn't really touch on your second question on the partnership and how that works, but I think that to me is kind of the door opener in terms of opening those conversations. And then as you continue to evolve, you start maybe running a few cycles together, building that trust on calls with clients, and you start to develop something that's pretty interesting.
Twice now you've said not just sharing lists. Educate the audience. What does that mean?
So when I think of educating the audience, I think of one, introducing yourself, like where you've come from, what your experience is within the ecosystem of sales and technology and services, but as well as what successes have you had in their world. I think relating it to them and being empathetic to how technology can be a tough sell. How do we find common wins across the board and tell those stories? And so that's usually where I start.
Reed, you want to try to answer the actual question?
I think what Josh is actually getting to is, when we're talking about lists, is every sales organization, whether it's an account-based group or not, has target account lists. And it's essentially these Excel sheets full of the companies we'd love to sell to. And everyone has them. And at the end of the day, there's one of 2 things are happening. Either where the software company has a lot of reps where they maybe have 20 to 50 accounts total that they can sell into, and they'd like to cross-reference those with either our customers, our relationships, our past customers, because with the consulting firm, our customers come and go as a need arises. So really, it's what sheet can we get from the consulting partner, from the services partner, in order to help one of our deals along. And really, the biggest difference is the software companies want to sell, because they have so many reps, they want to sell to their specific companies and the right types of verticals or types of companies. From a consulting perspective, where we're just really trying to solve people's problems, every name on that list is probably equally valuable to us in one way or another, because they're all going to have the same types of problems, both big companies, small companies, startups, all the way to the Fortune 500. So list from the services angle isn't as important, whereas the software companies, that's truly their Bible. That's what they're living on. And if I talk to 10 reps tomorrow, the overlap on those lists would be very, very high, and everyone's trying to sell to the same companies, and everyone who's listening to this is on one of those lists. So it's a very impersonal way of doing business and trying to work together, and it doesn't really create that relationship and the trust that we're talking about. And as Paul said, that face-to-face interaction of, do you really want to work together? Do you really want to find a common goal and work together? Throwing Excel sheets over the fence is probably the last way, but for some reason, that's the partner team's dream, and that's what they do first.
All right. Well, we're starting to bag on the partner guys, which is okay. They probably deserve it to a certain extent. Shout out to our partner guy, Mike Barbeau.
Great guy.
Great guy.
Love the partner guys. Hate the list.
Hate the list. All right, so let's take a rewind then. So, Paul, you said that trust and relationships are the top 2 things that make a successful partner program. If we go all the way back before the program is established, if you were saying, hey, partner team at whatever organization, if you were to go out and say, identify someone who looks like a good potential partner, what does that foundation need to look like so that by the time it gets into a rep's hands, there's already some establishment of a baseline that you feel like it's something versus just, hey, we've got a new partnership, you guys are going to list share?
It has to first off be a true partnership, and it can't be a competitive nature. So as Paul said, some of the software companies have internal services arms, whereas essentially now we're bringing a partner on as also our biggest competitor. So that's a very interesting dance to have to go around, and the way the reps are compensated is probably the next key piece. So understanding how we can serve them, how we can provide the most value for them, whether that's quicker deal cycles, larger deals for them overall. But I really think that the key foundation is being able to get a quick win. We have to be able to make a deal together, have a story to tell, and until that happens, it's very, very tough. So even if the partnership is great from a product perspective and a service perspective, where they just go together like peanut butter and jelly, if the people making the sandwich don't know how to make the sandwich, it really just doesn't work.
Yeah, I've got this theory that in a new partnership, you should never connect an AE to an AE as your first motion. I feel like the partner people should look to identify a gap in their customer portfolio. They have X number of customers that they've already sold to that are using their platform that are struggling with this thing. And if it's a big enough sample size, you seek out partners that can solve for this thing, right? And then you go out to said partner and say, listen, 80% of my book of business in our entire organization is struggling with this thing. Can you help devise a solution for solving that problem? If you can, we're going to do a pilot on 2 customers. And what's going to happen is I'm going to connect you with the customer success person and your account executive who can help start to formulate what that problem, the solution to that problem looks like. And that's your pilot. Now, best case scenario is on each side, the partner's book has a similar challenge that they're trying to solve for their customers, and then there's crossover. So this could be reciprocal. So now both teams get referred over a new deal through this solution problem. You get those going, you test it, you see if this is actually a solution to the problem you have, and build 2 case studies ideally, and then you start educating and talking to reps and think about co-selling. Because in my experience, the hardest part about the partnerships, co-selling is hard. That's like this big dream. But co-selling is fucking hard. Like at the end of the day, really it is coming up with how do we wrap solutions together and then enable the team to start talking about it. What do you think of that?
And so to clarify, I'm curious, when you say start with solutioning for some problems, are you talking about post-sell in the technology world? So someone already has the software and they're having problems with enablement or ROI out of the tool.
Correct.
And so leveraging that and finding needs in that area, and does the service organization potentially fill those needs?
Yes, we don't build the partnership on going and finding new business together. We fill it on solving our customers' problems, and then we can go to market with it once we've proven that it has solved some problems.
That's the common goal we were just talking about. The customer success person at a software company has the same goal as a services person. It's solving the customer's problem, and that's why that alignment is so much easier. Also, the friction isn't there of we both have to go get a sale and get as much as we can out of it. That goes away in the success factor piece as well. So it's very logical. It'd be interesting to see it in motion.
So I like that a lot. I think that creates a solid foundation for solving problems and acknowledging problems, right? And so I think that can tend to lead itself into, once those use cases are created, like so with some of our more mature partners, that's lent itself into, not the AE to AE direct conversation, but AE to like sales leaders on what's happening in the early sales cycle before their customers that are objections and things that we can't overcome as an organization, or common themes that we're seeing. And maybe that's something that we could be solving as a byproduct of a worry after a post-acquisition of the technology. So you're saying, if something's happened in a renewal and enablement or ROI is an issue, and so that is starting to trend into the top of funnel exercise and give sales folks a problem, those use cases start to then be gold mines for reps as a solution to bring a services partner in.
Completely. Yeah, I just don't think that because the other theory is, and again, this is coming through the lens of a services organization that did a lot of implementation of technology. Now, our services have brought in a lot of other services partners out there, don't just singularly implement a technology, but in the customer's eyes, there's typically very little value in the implementation itself. It's just something that has to happen, and they want to pay as little amount of money as possible for it. The focus needs to not be on the implementation itself, but on how am I going to be able to do what the rep sold me the dream on doing. And in my experience, there's all sorts of issues with B2B software sales. The good ones are freaking great at selling the dream. So how have you run into that challenge of the dream that's been sold and the reality that they might have to deal with when now it's sitting in your lap as a services partner to solve that problem and bring the dream to life?
Well, this one's fun.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're right. The good ones are great at it. The top level enterprise salespeople who are not the people that are moving every 18 months to 2 years are incredible. And they really do care about their clients. They really do want to solve the same problems and why they work with partners so well. On the flip side of that, you've got we'll call them younger salespeople who are a little bit newer. Maybe they came up through a BDR role. They really just need to get a win. They really want to get a deal. And unfortunately, this is the reason for the bad rap of the used car salesman, young software salesperson. I think is starting to catch that, which is just, we're going to tell you everything does everything. And the problem is that their competitors are doing the same. And there is a lot of crossover between all of this technology, especially in sales and marketing technology, where there's a new software that pops up every day that says it does more than the last one. So it's very easy for them to say, yeah, it does that. The proof is in the pudding, though. And the problem is they either need a professional services arm or a partner that can actually make it do those things. And I think that's one of the biggest value points for a services organization is, do you want to be able to do all the things you saw in that pretty demo? And if you do, you're not going to be able to do it based off of just what the software company told you. There's no easy button to click it and say this just works. There's lots of dependencies around that.
What about the concept of third-party validation?
From other clients?
Well, think about it this way, right? If you're a software company and you want to leverage a services company to help you in your deal cycle, one of the values could be, well, this is an independent third party that's advocating for our software and helping through the evaluation. Have you seen that work, or does it blow up?
It depends. So it usually depends on the type of company. A more mature company does see you as a complete third party, and I can't even count how many times we'd be on a call with a partner, a software partner, and then I'd get an email or a text message or a phone call right afterwards from the prospect who says, hey, can we just talk one-on-one real quick? And they want exactly that, which is that third-party validation of like, hey, I know we got introduced through X, but can we really talk about their competitors and talk about X, Y, and Z? And that is really when the partnership can work great for everyone, because now we're starting to really understand the full picture of everything, as opposed to, well, that must just be their guy. They bring them into everything, and then the perception is we're essentially the same, and there's really no difference between the two of us. So it's probably 50-50, and one is way better than the other from a success perspective.
But if that happens, the level of trust needs to be fairly high with your software partner.
Sure, and it's kind of the old dance with the girl you brought to the dance type situation. You know that's the relationship that you're in, and it's very important to be completely transparent. Say, hey, I got reached out to you by this person. This is what they want. This is what they want to know, and use that to help them, and use that as a moment to say, hey, this is why they don't trust you as much as they trust me. They want to see these things, and they want the proof of, yes, your software can actually do that. So the good reps will not see that as a threat, and they'll make it better. And in some cases, they'll see that as a complete threat, and it'll kill the deal for everybody.
Yeah, I've seen both sides. I've seen where you can use it to your advantage if there is the prerequisite trust there, and they allow you to you run the same but almost separate cycles where you don't always have to join one another's calls. You're doing things, and you're each gathering intelligence individually that help roll up into the overall deal strategy. And I've seen that work really, really well, because you can come together with a more complete picture of the information. I've also seen AEs push back and be like, no, I need to be on every single call. And you can almost feel tension as you get closer and closer to closer, because to me, it's not as customer centric.
Totally, and the prospect will feel that as well. If you're feeling the tension, they're feeling it as well, and then they don't believe they're working with a cohesive unit, and they're probably not trusting everyone at that point. So again, that's setting the expectations up front, understanding what we're all in this for, and what we're really trying to solve, and having a service attitude to really help the client in all forms has to be key.
Well, even how many stories, like, I'm sure we could all tell stories around where, a client's coming or a partner's coming in, they have whatever colored lens their brand is on the situation. And so the client side can recognize that and say, okay, they're selling me one part of the puzzle, right? There's a lot of other things going on. And where I've seen a lot of value in service organizations and conversations we've had, to Reed's point around, we know the competition, like, as a group who knows all the technology they may be evaluating, there's a lot of value there. I think right now, I look at SalesLoft, Drift, and Sixth Sense. There's a lot of organizations that are evaluating these three tools, maybe at once, maybe at tandem. They're struggling on how do we sequence these out? What do we start with first? How do we enable the teams? What are the roles and responsibilities? Do you know anybody that has experience with these tools that isn't just on the client side or leverages the tools, but maybe is a service organization that can help facilitate or implement or even just strategically guide the usage of said tools? So it just gives a different lens. It doesn't necessarily always feel so essentially focused from that particular partner or technology piece. Like, there's an invisible thread that we can talk to with most folks. So
yeah, I've definitely seen do you have a customer case study leveraging our platform that you can bring to the table versus us bringing our own case study?
Yeah.
And I've seen that has been a positive if you can do that, especially if it's industry specific and all that kind of stuff. It certainly is a trust builder. Let's pivot a little bit to some of the worst situations you've gotten into in a partner deal.
Are you looking at me?
For the record, Josh is looking at Reed.
For the record.
I mean, it goes back to not having clear expectations. And even if you and the other rep have clear expectations, the services world and the software world work very, very differently. They qualify deals differently. They expect them to close at different times. They just have a very different flow to them. And even if you have the best trust between you and the partner AE, that you guys are great, and you've had the FaceTime, like Paul said, you've done deals together in the past, you really have a good game plan on how you're going to work with prospects and really help them, then steps in their manager. And their manager really only cares about their deal closing as fast as possible. And that doesn't always work. That's not always in the strategy. That's not always best for the client. It doesn't need to close tomorrow just because it's your end of week, month, quarter, year, or whatever holiday it is or whatever that is. And the problem with that is that the client really doesn't care. And the sales leadership, that's all they care about. We got to hit this deal by this time. And the problem is that it's very easy to point the finger at who else is in the deal. Why are you slowing it down? Why are you doing whatever it is? Just tell the client everything's fine and get them to sign on the line tomorrow. And that's a huge problem, especially when you're a services organization who is really trying to look out for what's best for the client at all times. And the reason why I've worked in services sales for over a decade at this point is because of that exact goal of how do we serve and help clients and help prospects, not just today, but tomorrow and ongoing, past the implementation of a piece of software. That's the other piece. The software companies disappear after that for the most part. There's a handoff. So, the AE may care a bit because he's got some upsell potential, but the manager of that AE really does not care. They're a line on a spreadsheet or on a forecast in Salesforce to say, yep, that deal's going to close by the end of our quarter, and we did all the work. Let's go make it happen. We'll kick that partner out if we have to.
It's so funny. You say it would work differently, and we all know, being in sales as long as we have, that the best deals have a legitimate, compelling event that drives that deal against the timeline, whether it's the launch of a campaign, a reorg, whatever that compelling event may be. Your end of quarter is not a compelling event to the client.
I mean, you could write a book on that. I mean, that literally should be the title of a sales book, and that prospects will buy when they want to buy. It's the old adage. And unless they care and potentially even say love you, they probably won't care about your end of quarter or end of month. And you need to be okay with that. And if there was a model for sales leaders out there to understand that and to put that into their reps' minds, that could be huge change for the industry and get rid of some of the perception that's negative around sales in general.
Agreed. Best deal, Pauly. Well, we'll give you the positive side, Mr. Positive.
Oh, I was gonna say I had some good stuff to add there, but I think let's move to the positive side. Let's see. Best partner experience. I think.
Other than you hosting baseball games and suites.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty exciting stuff. I think. I think when you have a client, and I think there's two ways that this can happen, right? Whether it's a client that is already a client of ours on the services side, and we bring a referral to an AE, or vice versa, where an AE is working to sell their product. Let's go that route, because I think an AE selling like their technology into an org starts to hit a wall, right? Or starts to hit some objections or things that they are struggling to overcome within that deal cycle to either drive value, to your point, there's no catalytic event that really is pushing this deal along. And so they start to scale out and lean on pricing as a lever to try to ignite the deal, which, if I had $1 for every end of quarter conversation with a partner and forecasting call, and I think we all not be sitting here. But the best deal that I think I've had, and I won't use names, but when an AE starts to struggle on the technology side, but they are able to recognize a problem that the customer is outwardly crying for or like articulating, but that their technology may not solve because it's a part of a larger ecosystem, that they recognize that maybe my piece of the puzzle isn't the only piece of the puzzle that's going to make this work, and it's open to feedback and open to leveraging a service organization to support and have that conversation. So it goes back to establishing that trust, whether it's an event or baseball game, building that relationship, them opening up and trusting you, and taking them through a cycle. And I've had a lot of these where they finally submit and they go, okay, I need some help, right? And it's cool to go be able to jump into that and have conversations to support and I guess help the client realize where their piece of the puzzle is going to help drive that value, and then see them move forward and then make that call to a rep and say, hey, by the way, I had a great conversation. They're going to go with you, expect a call, whatever that may be. And it can be pretty exciting. So I have a few calls specifically. I don't want to use names, but that's like the general timeline of where I find most excitement in this process. Like it's cool to see that. So
one of the things I found most interesting going through the spectrum over this last several years of working in the commercial business with a lot of our partners, moving up into their whatever they call it, right? But you start working in the SMB, you get into the mid-market, you get in the enterprise. And today I'm working in the enterprise, but in the enterprise, it's a lot more orchestrated. Like when there are partnerships, these people, like you said earlier, are seasoned people. They typically want to orchestrate every single touch point and understand what's happening along the way. There tends to be a lot more planning with the partner, which you don't tend to see down in the we'll call it corporate ranks. But one of the things that I have found as a positive is, to read to your point earlier about selling services, is it's not tangible, right? There's nothing to show, there's nothing to demo. You're building trust, you're trying to set expectations, you're trying to build a plan to deploy something potentially or solve a problem. Well, if you can leverage those skills to coach sometimes the young sellers who are moving up in their career, and the ones that embrace it, I've seen have a really great career trajectory. They move on and move up into the enterprise faster because they start to think like a consultant. And as you move up market, if you're going to be in enterprise sales, you frankly have to think like a consultant.
Yeah, as Paul was answering about some of his best deals, I was thinking back to when they've been able to help younger reps who are new, because like you said, there isn't anything tangible when you're selling sales. You're selling services. It's air. You're selling the dream, essentially. You're solving people's problems, and that you have the knowledge, the team, the skill set, the expertise to do it. And all we need is your commitment and your money to say, let's go do it together. And when the younger reps realize that the software piece of it isn't the whole piece of it, and the light bulb goes, wow, we're really helping people. And I remember a specific deal we worked probably 3 or 4 years ago where this rep came in, he wanted to prep with me ahead of time, the standard, let's talk for 10 minutes before the meeting. I'm going to talk through these 11 slides. We're going to demo these features and benefits, and then I'm going to give you 3 minutes at the end to talk. And I couldn't help myself, and I jumped in very early, and the call went great. And I talked to the rep afterwards, and he was a little hesitant. He's like, I didn't get to go through all this stuff. I didn't get to show him this, and I didn't get to show him this, and I didn't get to show him this. And it was all the features and benefits that he thought were important. And I said, well, it's going to be okay. We have a good client. We're going to get to talk to him again. If you want to walk through your demo again, we're going to get that. And he thought he had lost his chance. And that afternoon, the prospect called him and said, send me a contract, let's buy. And at that point, the light bulb went off of, wow, we sold the dream. We didn't sell the features and benefits. We didn't sell the widget. We sold what Pete's trying to accomplish. Let's go and do it. And we did a really great deal together. The client was massively successful, and everyone was happy. And that rep trust level was huge for not just myself, but us as a company at that point. And we worked together for a couple of years on lots of deals. So that type of light bulb moment is great. And being able to provide that planning and that structure of a more enterprise sales cycle to someone who's brand new, who's just trying to get that win, that's pretty cool.
Very cool. All right, guys, let's wrap up with a little rapid fire here. Selling to and through partners has its perks to a certain extent, right? We do lots of relationship building. Mm-hmm. So, Paul, most fun partner event you've been a part of?
Oh, geez. I think this just recent one we did a baseball game at the Red Sox, Fenway Park. I'd never been, so it was great to post-COVID now. I think people are eager to get out. Everyone was excited. There was Red Sox fans. They won the game. A lot of good relationships, a lot of cross-mingling between partners and clients and prospects. So very successful event, and had a blast doing it. So. All right, Reed.
I'd say the biggest perk wasn't exactly when we swiped an expense card and went to a baseball game or something, but truly, some of these partner sales reps who are now 3 and 4 companies on, have moved on in their career, and I'm still friends with them even though we don't partner today. And when we're in town together, we still hang out. I think that's probably one of the biggest perks is really just widening our relationships and our network together and being able to, we created enough trust working together that now we're actually friends. I think that's pretty cool.
Ultimate relationship guy.
Big relationship.
I'll give you my favorite one. So in 2015, we chartered a bus and went to the Marketo offices in San Mateo and pulled up and told the corporate sales team that we were taking them all to Napa Valley. This is in San Mateo. So our CEO at the time, Justin Gray, and myself, we drove up to the thing. We said, all right, corporate sales team, we're all going to Napa, let's roll. And everyone's like, all right, let's get on. And I'll never forget, there's a guy named Nick Vlahov. It was his first day. He was an SDR. And 6 years later, he's still with Marketo. He's gone through 2 acquisitions, and he's actually beyond a frontline manager. I think he's like an area director or something like that. His career has gone straight up, and we'll give it all to us taking him to Napa Valley. That's got to be what it was.
That's exactly what happened.
That's exactly what happened. Shout out to Nick Vlahov at Adobe. Awesome guy. All right, guys. So let's do the quick overview. What is Shift Paradigm? What is it that you say that you do here?
You want me to go first?
I'd like to really hear Paul's answer, actually.
So, Shift Paradigm.
Shifting in my chair.
Aside from recognizing paradigms in the marketing, helping companies shift through those, that's Josh laughing. I think we do a couple different things. I think supporting clients in their audience experience, looking at how are they going to market, how do we really drive the right message to the right people based on who our buyers are. I think that can be a lot of really fun work. I think certainly there's technology and all the partner stuff we talked to today around putting kind of like a piece of a puzzle piece together of what does this look like. I think that can be pretty exciting and stuff that Shift likes to focus on. Certainly, a big ecosystem there. And then the third part, I think, when I talk about Shift and what we do is really enabling people. So teams move, whether they're the client side or whatever, people move out of roles and they need help backfilling and taking care of technology. And there's a backfill there that we can support given the expertise. So kind of taking it from all the strategy, the technology to the people and helping people out.
Awesome. Well, guys, thanks for joining the show. If I were to do a quick recap of what we learned today about selling services to and through software partners, if you are in sales or you own an agency or you own some sort of consulting or service business and you're thinking about tackling the tech partner ecosystem, the 3 things that I heard is start with building relationships. Those relationships are built on trust, and trust is built by setting clear expectations on the front end. Guys, thanks for joining the show.